Peace and blessings, Israel. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 3 and verse 42. It says, Now when Judas and his brethren saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, they said one to another, Let us restore the decayed estate of our people, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary. So we're reading about Judas Maccabees and his brothers. They were the sons of Mattathias, and these men were valiant men, men that loved the Most High and loved their nation of people. So they were all about the welfare of Israel, and they wanted to restore the estate of Israel because under King Antiochus, the Greeks and the men that was under him, they did a lot of evil things towards our people. And we're going to read about some of that. So it says in verse 44, Then was the congregation gathered together that they might be ready for battle, that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem was laid void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and the aliens kept a stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe and the harp ceased. So the condition of Israel was down and out. And under the Greeks, they had defiled the sanctuary. They did all type of abominable acts in our sanctuary. Fornication, sacrifice swine's flesh on the altar. They did all type of abominations in the land. So that's why the Israel, at this point, that's why it's telling us that the joy was taken from Jacob, and how the pipe and the harp was ceasing, because Israel was not rejoicing in their land. So it says, Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mashpah over against Jerusalem, for in Mashpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. So Israel came together to pray here in Mashpah, a place where aforetime they would pray. Now remember, this history here that we read about under the Maccabees, this was during the time of the Greeks. So this was a few hundred years before we read about Yahushua in the Gospels. So in verse 47 it says, Then they fasted that day. Then it says, And put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their head, and rent their clothes. So Israel, they were in seeking the Most High and prayer and fasting. They put on sackcloth, they put ashes on their head, and they rent their outer garments. Okay, so that was a sign of how they were repenting, and how their heart was broken and remorseful for sin. Now here's the point here. This is verse 48. And laid open the book of the law. So when they saw the desolate condition of Israel, they came across the book of the law. So the book of the law is going into the writings of Moses. Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. That's the book of the law. And in this book was contained commandments. Now let's keep reading. So it says, Wherein, meaning in our book of the law, the heathen, so under the Greeks, under Antiochus and the Greeks, the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. So we can understand what this verse is saying. When Judas Maccabees and the brothers opened the book of the law, what did they see in that book of the law that the heathen did? Well, they made images of their gods in our book of the law. So for example, in the commandment where it says, Thou shalt have no other gods before me, or thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, what did the heathen do? They sought to paint the likenesses of their images in our book of the law. So the reason why this is being emphasized is because in Israel today, you have Israel that justify making the image of the Most High Christ, and they go to this scripture to justify that image. Where this scripture is not telling us that we had images of the Most High or Christ, Yahushua, in the book of the law, because the book of the law, when you read in Deuteronomy 4, the Most High told us that we didn't see an image of him. when he spoke the commandments, lest we corrupt ourselves and make an image of a man. So I'm going to read in the reference column, because it says, wherein the heathen has sought to paint the likenesses of their images. So when you read, it gives you a little number 1. So let's see what it says, because this is out of the original translation. So it says, or for the which the heathen had made diligent search, so they diligently looked through our book of the law, that they might paint the likeness of their what? Idols. So under Antiochus, the Greeks painted the likenesses of their idols, Bacchus and all their different gods. They had painted images in our book of the law to make mockery of the Most High. So now you have Israelites today that take this scripture out of context to justify an image